A billionaire was driving his fiancée home until he saw his ex crossing the crosswalk with twins. Welcome to Inspired Folktales. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. When the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10 and share what you felt along the way. And if you enjoy emotional stories filled with twists and hidden truths, make sure to follow Inspired Folktales so you don't miss the next one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy every detail. Mr. Adrian Cole, a super rich guy, was driving his super fancy, shiny black car through the busy streets of Seattle. The sun was setting, making the inside of his car glow golden. Next to him was Miss Cassie Wells, a pretty lady with blonde hair and cool sunglasses. She was 28 years old and seemed like a perfect match for Adrian right now. She was pretty, did her own thing, and didn't make things complicated. "This restaurant has a 2-month wait," Cassie said, checking her hair in the mirror. "I can't believe you got us a table for tonight." Adrian smiled. His gray eyes were on the road. At 40, he'd learned that money could get you almost anything, even a last-minute dinner at a popular spot. His dark hair, with a little bit of gray near his ears, sparkled as he looked at her. "That's what happens when you own power companies for half the city." Cassie giggled, a light, happy sound. "You make it sound so easy." Easy. That's all Adrian wanted his life to be. He'd had many tricky relationships, busy work, and feelings that were too much for him. Easy felt like a superpower now. He and Cassie had been together for 3 months. Long enough to have fun, but short enough to skip serious talks about forever. The traffic light ahead turned red, and Adrian smoothly stopped his car. His phone buzzed with work messages, but he didn't even look. Friday nights were special. They were for dinner, looking at art, and talking about fun things, not serious stuff. "I love how calm you are these days," Cassie said, touching his hand. "When we first met, you were always so busy and serious." Adrian held the steering wheel a little tighter. Serious. His last girlfriend, Lena, had told him he was too focused on work, not around enough, and didn't want a normal family life. Breaking up was hard but needed. It let them both go find what they really wanted. "I've learned to enjoy the now," he said, and he really meant it. No more stress about plans for months ahead. No more talks about holiday traditions he didn't care about. No more hints about shiny rings or family dinners that made him feel trapped. The crosswalk in front of them filled with people walking home from work, couples holding hands, and teenagers laughing. Adrian watched them, thinking about the wine he'd order at the restaurant. Then, something made him really look. A lady was crossing the street, carefully moving through the crowd. She held something close to her chest. No, 2 somethings. Babies. Twins, it looked like, wrapped in soft blue and pink blankets. Her reddish-brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She walked very carefully, like someone carrying super precious treasures. Adrian gasped. Even from far away, even with her head down, he knew that shape. The soft curve of her neck, the way she held her shoulders, her careful walk. It was Lena Hart, his ex-girlfriend, the one he had left exactly 1 year and 1 month ago. Lena stopped in the middle of the crosswalk as one of the babies started to cry. She shifted both babies to one arm and gently stroked the crying baby's face with her free hand. Her lips moved. She was singing, Adrian realized, or humming something soft. The baby quieted right away, and she kept walking. "Adrian!" Cassie's voice sounded far away. "The light's green!" He blinked, realizing he'd been staring. Cars behind him were waiting. Lena had disappeared into the crowd on the other side of the street. But the picture was stuck in his mind. Babies. Twin babies who looked about 4 months old. Adrian's hands shook a little as he pressed the gas pedal. 1 year and 1 month ago, when they broke up, Lena hadn't said anything about being pregnant. But the timing was just right. "You look like you saw a ghost," Cassie said, looking at him with worry. "Do you know that woman?" Adrian kept his eyes on the road, his mind racing. Was Lena pregnant when they split up? Did she know and choose not to tell him? Or did she find out later and decide to do it all by herself? More and more questions popped into his head, each one more confusing than the last. But deep down, he had one big, surprising thought. The woman he thought he knew so well had become a mom. She was raising 2 kids, maybe his kids, without him. And she looked happy, peaceful, like someone who found exactly what she was meant to do. Sorry, he managed, forcing a smile. Just thinking about work. But he wasn't thinking about work. He was thinking about a talk they'd had the night before they broke up, when Lena said she wanted to start a family someday. He had been honest, maybe too honest, about not wanting kids. He told her he couldn't give her the family life she wanted, that he needed freedom to build his big business empire. She listened quietly, nodded, and the next morning agreed they weren't right for each other in the long run. It was the calmest breakup he'd ever had. No yelling. No blaming, no trying to change each other. Just 2 people agreeing they wanted different things and being brave enough to walk away. But now, seeing her with those babies, Adrian wondered if calm actually meant super lonely. He pulled into the fancy restaurant's parking, his hands still shaky. Cassie was already putting on her lipstick, excited for their dinner. She was everything he thought he wanted: beauty without problems, a friend without demands, fun without duties. So why did his chest feel empty? Why did the picture of Lena humming to those babies make his carefully built, easy life suddenly feel scary and hollow? As he gave his keys to the valet, one question echoed in his mind: what if the life he tried so hard to avoid was the only one worth living? What would you have done if you were Adrian? Told Lena right away that you saw her, or tried to forget and move on with your new life? Lena Hart carefully shifted baby Oliver to her left arm as she opened the door to her small 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't super fancy, but it was cozy. The afternoon light came through the thin curtains, making soft shadows on the wood floor she had fixed herself when she was pregnant. Baby Emma stirred against her chest, making soft little sounds that meant she'd need to eat soon. Her apartment was nothing like the super high-up fancy home she used to share with Adrian. No huge windows looking out at the bay, no shiny marble counters, no smart house stuff that listened to her voice. But it was hers. Every chair picked with care, every corner set up with a reason. The pale yellow walls showed she believed kids should grow up in a warm place, not a cold, super fancy one. She carefully put both babies into their crib, which they shared because they needed to. Oliver immediately reached for his sister's hand, their tiny fingers holding on to each other. It always made Lena's heart feel so full of fierce love. 4 months. 4 months of not much sleep. 4 months of learning to change 2 diapers at the same time. 4 months of singing lullabies at 3 in the morning while bouncing babies who took turns not wanting to sleep. 4 months of a love so strong it sometimes made her catch her breath. 4 months of never, ever wishing she had told Adrian he was the father. Lena went to the kitchen, a small room where she had learned to make formula bottles super fast. The fridge was covered with cards for doctor visits, shots, and Mommy and Me classes she couldn't really afford but went to anyway because Emma and Oliver deserved everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Claire. Coffee tomorrow? I can bring bagels. Lena smiled as she typed back. If you don't mind baby craziness. They're crying a lot lately. Claire's answer came right away. Babies cry. Sisters listen. See you at 10. This was Lena's helper team now. Her younger sister, her neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, who sometimes watched the babies when Lena had job interviews, and Dr. Sarah Kim, the kid's doctor who had become almost a friend. A small team, but strong. People who showed up without being asked, who knew that love sometimes meant letting others help you. She checked the formula temperature on her wrist, remembering how Adrian used to make fun of her for being so careful. You check restaurant reviews like you're planning a war, he'd said once, laughing as she researched their anniversary dinner for weeks. He didn't get it. Being careful wasn't being worried, it was being loving. It was caring enough to do the work beforehand. Emma's cry broke the quiet, and then Oliver started crying too. Lena moved fast, scooping them both up and sitting in the rocking chair that used to be her grandma's. The chair creaked softly as she started feeding Emma, while Oliver snuggled against her shoulder, his cries turning into happy snuffles. This was the moment she had been most scared of when she was pregnant, the huge job of taking care of two lives who depended on her completely. But instead of falling apart, she found a strength she didn't know she had. Every night without sleep, every doctor's visit alone, every little step they took celebrated with no one but her babies. Each thing made her stronger inside. Her phone rang. For a crazy second, her heart jumped, thinking it might be Adrian. But the screen showed her boss's name from the marketing company where she worked part-time from home. Lena, I know it's after hours, but the Johnson project needs some changes. Any chance you could do them this weekend? Lena looked at the babies in her arms, at the pile of laundry in the corner, at the stack of bills on her kitchen counter that she'd deal with after the babies were asleep. Of course, she said. Send them over. You're amazing. I don't know how you do it all. Neither do I sometimes, Lena thought. But what she said was, you just do what you have to do. After hanging up, she kept rocking, watching the light change on her babies' faces. Oliver had Adrian's straight nose and strong chin. You could already see it even at 4 months. Emma had Lena's green eyes and a determined little chin. They were beautiful, healthy, and had no idea their daddy was one of the richest men in the whole area. Lena had looked up Adrian exactly once since they broke up. The search results showed him at fancy parties, power company meetings, and big events. Always dressed perfectly, usually with a pretty lady on his arm. He looked successful, confident, and totally free from the kind of family stuff that filled Lena's days. She had closed the laptop and never looked again. The choice to keep the pregnancy a secret wasn't easy. For weeks after finding out she was having twins, Lena had typed and deleted dozens of messages to Adrian. She had driven to his office building 3 times, sitting in the parking lot, practicing talks that always ended the same way, him offering money, but not real feelings, or even worse, suggesting things that weren't what she wanted for her kids. Adrian had been honest about not wanting kids. He never pretended. The breakup was his idea, but in the end, they both agreed because they both knew they wanted different things. So why would babies change that? Lena decided that forcing someone to be a dad wasn't a good gift for anyone, especially not the kids. Emma and Oliver deserved parents who truly wanted them, not someone just doing what they had to do. As if feeling her thoughts, Oliver opened his dark eyes, so much like Adrian's, and looked at her with the serious way babies sometimes do. Lena traced his tiny eyebrow with her finger. I made the right choice, she whispered to him. Someday you'll understand. But even as she said it, a little voice in her head wondered if protecting them was really just being a little bit selfish. Was she truly protecting her children from a dad who didn't want them, or was she protecting herself from possibly being rejected again? The sun had completely set now, and the apartment was filled with soft shadows, marking the start of another long night. Lena carefully stood, put both babies back in their crib, and went to close the blinds. Through the window, she could see the city lights twinkling far away, including the shiny tower where Adrian's company had its offices. For just a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like if things were different. If he had wanted the same things she did, if somewhere in that tower he was thinking about her too. But dreams were dangerous when you had real lives depending on you. Lena pulled the blinds closed and turned away from the window, away from the life that might have been, and toward the life she had chosen to build by herself. Adrian couldn't taste the super expensive steak or the fancy wine. It was like drinking water. Across from him, Cassie was talking about her new photo project. Her eyes were bright as she talked with her fork, but her words sounded like background noise. All he could see were those 2 little bundles in Lena's arms. You're totally somewhere else, Cassie said, putting her glass down with a soft clink. Should I be mad? Adrian forced himself to pay attention to her. Cassie wore a black silk dress that fit her perfectly, her blonde hair shining in the candlelight. 3 months ago, when they met at a big energy meeting, he was drawn to how confident she was, how she did her own thing, and how she didn't seem needy at all. She was a great photographer with her own art gallery, her own apartment, her own life that connected with his without needing him. Everything he thought he wanted. "I'm sorry," he said, reaching across the table to cover her hand. "Long day. You know how it is with the big New Deal talks." She looked at his face with the same deep focus she used to take a perfect picture. "This isn't about work. I can tell the difference between your stressed face and your confused face. This is definitely confused." Adrian almost smiled, even though he felt bad. Cassie's honest way of speaking was one of the things he liked about her. No games, no trying to trick him into giving her information. If she had a question, she just asked it. "There was someone I saw earlier," he said carefully. "Someone I haven't seen in a while." "An ex?" "Yes." Cassie leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine. "The ex? The one you were with for 2 years before we met?" "Adrian, what do you need?" "This is personal, not business." "Even better," Marcus said. "Personal pays more." Adrian gave Marcus Lena's full name and the last address he knew. He felt like he was doing something he couldn't take back. "I need to know where she's living now. What she's been doing for the past year. Especially, I need to know about any children." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "This is about an ex?" Adrian nodded. He had mentioned Lena quickly when they first started dating, just like people do when talking about past relationships. Nothing super detailed, just the simple facts. They wanted different things. The breakup was friendly. They hadn't talked since. And seeing her brought up feelings. It brought up questions. Cassie was quiet for a long time, and Adrian could almost see her thinking about what to say. This was exactly the kind of complicated feelings he had been trying to avoid after Lena. Cassie had every right to be mad, to ask for explanations, to make this about their relationship. Instead, she surprised him. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I'm not sure there's anything to talk about yet. But you think there might be?" Adrian looked into her eyes. "I don't know." Cassie nodded slowly. "Okay. Well, when you figure it out, let me know if it affects us." It was exactly the kind of grown-up, not demanding answer that had made him like her in the first place. No jealousy, no demands for answers right away, no trying to control what he thought. Just understanding that people have pasts that sometimes show up again. So why did her understanding make him feel even more lonely than if she had gotten angry? They finished dinner, talking about her next art show and his company's new wind farms, work stuff that felt safe and familiar. When he dropped her off at her apartment, she kissed him lightly on the cheek. "Take care of yourself," she said. "Whatever this is, don't let it eat you up." Adrian drove home to his fancy penthouse, but instead of going upstairs, he found himself walking the empty streets. Seattle at night always helped him think clearly. The smell of the ocean and the energy of a city that never really sleeps. But tonight, his mind wouldn't be quiet. The timing was impossible to ignore. If Lena had been pregnant when they broke up and hadn't told him, why? If she had found out afterward, why hadn't she reached out? And if those babies weren't his, if the timing was just a mean coincidence, why did the possibility feel like a real ache in his chest? By the time he got back to his building, Adrian had made a decision he wasn't proud of. He called Mr. Marcus Webb, the private detective his company used to check on new business partners. Marcus answered right away, even though it was late. "Yes. And you think she might have had your kid without telling you?" "I think I need to know for sure that she didn't." "Fair enough. Give me 24 hours. After hanging up, Adrian stood in his living room, surrounded by all the proof of his success. The huge windows showed a big view of the bay. His furniture was special. His art collection was worth more than most people's houses. Everything was exactly how he wanted it, clean, neat, free from the messy family life he had once been scared would make him feel trapped. But tonight, the space felt huge and empty. He poured himself a big drink and sat in the leather chair where he usually read work papers. Instead, he found himself remembering things about Lena he had tried to forget. The way she hummed when she cooked, always the same song, usually a little off-key but not caring at all. How she kept a small notebook where she wrote down funny things people said, saying she was gathering ideas for a book she'd never write. The careful way she arranged flowers, spending 20 minutes moving stems until they looked just right in a way he couldn't see but learned to like. And the conversation they'd had 6 weeks before they broke up, when she mentioned her sister's new baby. "Don't you ever wonder what it would be like?" she had asked, watching him hold his baby nephew at a family party. "Having someone who's part of both of us." "No," he had said, and he meant it. "I've worked too hard to build this life to make it complicated now." She had nodded and changed the subject, but he remembered a quick sadness that crossed her face. At the time, he thought it was just normal disappointment. Most women her age wanted kids eventually. Now he wondered if it was something more specific. Adrian's phone buzzed with a text from Cassie. "Hope you're getting some answers. Sleep well." He stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Thank you." But sleep felt impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lena stopping in that crosswalk, adjusting those blankets with such gentle skill. She had looked different, not just because she was a mom, but because of a kind of peace he had never seen in her before. During their relationship, Lena had always seemed a little tense, like she was waiting for something. He had thought it was about her job goals or the normal stress of living in a big city. Now he wondered if she had been waiting for him to want the same things she did. And when it was clear he never would, she had stopped waiting and started building the life she wanted without him. The thought should have made him feel good. Instead, it felt like a loss, not just of Lena, but of chances he had been too scared to think about. As morning arrived, Adrian made a decision that surprised him. Whatever Marcus found out, no matter how this turned out, he wouldn't hide behind detectives and helpers. If those babies were his, he would face it directly. The question was, what would he do then? Marcus Webb's office was in a plain building in Pioneer Square, stuck between an old bookstore and a coffee shop that filled the hallway with the yummy smell of dark coffee. Adrian had never been there before. Their other business had always been done over secret phone calls and hidden emails. But this felt too personal, too important for just digital talking. "I have what you asked for," Marcus said, sliding a brown folder across his desk. "But before you look at it, I need to ask, are you ready for whatever's in here?" Adrian's hand hovered over the folder. 24 hours of waiting had felt like a lifetime. He had barely slept, cancelled 2 important meetings, and found himself driving past Lena's old neighborhood 3 times, looking for glimpses of reddish-brown hair and baby strollers. "Just tell me," Adrian said. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Lena Hart, 32 years old, living at 1247 Pine Street, apartment 3B. She works part-time as a marketing helper for Clearwater Communications. Single mom to twins, Oliver James Hart and Emma Grace Hart. Born 4 months and 2 weeks ago at Swedish Medical Center." Adrian gasped. 4 months and 2 weeks. The timing was perfect, or terrible, depending on how he looked at it. "The father?" he managed to ask. "Not listed on the birth certificates. Hospital records show she went to all her pre-baby doctor appointments alone, said she was single, and didn't give the dad's info for medical history." The words hit Adrian like punches. No dad listed, all appointments alone. She had purposely kept him out of everything about their lives. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Money records show she's been paying for everything herself. No secret money coming in, no child support, no help from family beyond her sister Claire sometimes babysitting. She's been doing this completely on her own." Adrian opened the folder with shaky hands. Inside were pictures, secret photos that made him feel like he was peeking. But he couldn't stop looking. Lena pushing a double stroller through a big market, both babies bundled up against the Seattle rain. Lena at a baby doctor's office, juggling diaper bags and car seats like a pro. Lena sitting in a park, holding Oliver while Emma napped in the stroller, her face peaceful as she watched other families play. But it was the last photo that broke something inside him. Lena was in what looked like her living room, both babies on a blanket on the floor during tummy time. She was lying on her stomach, facing them, her chin on her hands, smiling at something one of them was doing. The picture showed a moment of pure joy, very private and real. It was the look he had seen on her face only once during their relationship, when she held her new baby nephew for the first time. "The babies," Adrian said quietly. Do they look like anyone special?" Marcus looked at Adrian's face carefully. "I'm not a genes expert, but the boy has some strong features that could be a coincidence, or they could be inherited." Adrian closed the folder, his mind spinning. Everything he had built his life around, control, choice, careful plans, had been wiped out by a decision Lena had made without him. She had known she was carrying his children and had chosen to raise them alone instead of making his carefully built freedom messy. The thought should have made him feel good. Instead, it felt like being betrayed and losing something, all mixed together in a feeling he couldn't name. "There's one more thing," Marcus said. "She's been looking for a full-time job. 3 interviews in the past 2 weeks, all for marketing boss jobs that would pay a lot more than her current work. My guess is the part-time money isn't enough with 2 babies." Money. Of course, it came down to money eventually. Adrian's first thought was a bit mean. Maybe Lena's quietness wasn't about protecting him, but about getting ready for a bigger payout later. But as the thought came, he pushed it away. The woman in those pictures, struggling with diaper bags and taking care of 2 babies alone, didn't look like someone playing a long game for money. She looked like someone doing her best with a super hard situation. "I want you to stop watching her," Adrian said suddenly. "And I want all copies of these photos destroyed. Everything. Computer files, printed copies, cloud backups. I want your word that this never happened." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You sure? I could keep an eye on things. Let you know if..." "No. This isn't how I want to handle this. And Marcus, I need those photos destroyed before I leave here today." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding how serious the request was. "Consider it done. Everything gets wiped clean." After leaving Marcus's office, Adrian drove around the city without a plan, ending up parked outside his office building. Through his car window, he could see his company's name in gold on the building. Coal, renewable energy, everything he had worked for, everything he had put first over friends and family. Everything that had seemed so important just 2 days ago. His phone buzzed with a call from his business partner, David Chin. "Adrian, where have you been? The new investors are waiting for your presentation this afternoon." "Reschedule it," Adrian said. "Adrian! We've been working on this deal for 6 months. This could make us super big." "I said reschedule it." There was silence on the phone. Adrian had never, in 10 years of working together, asked to delay a big presentation. "Everything okay?" David asked. "I need some time to handle something personal." "Personal? You don't have personal matters." The comment stung because it was true. Adrian had spent the past year building a life with no personal problems, no emotional stuff that could get in the way of his work goals. It had seemed smart at the time. Now it felt like being a coward. After hanging up, Adrian sat in his car for nearly an hour, watching people walk past on the sidewalk. Families, couples, single people, all moving through their lives with reasons he couldn't see. For the first time in his grown-up life, he felt completely unsure of his own purpose. He thought about calling Lena directly. But what would he say? "I hired a private detective to spy on you and found out you've been raising my children in secret." There was no way that conversation wouldn't make him sound like either a creepy stalker or a missing dad. But he couldn't pretend he didn't know. The knowledge sat in his chest like a heavy weight, making every breath feel hard. His phone rang again. This time it was Cassie. "How are you doing?" "I found out what I needed to know." Adrian closed his eyes. "And now I have to figure out what to do about it." "Whatever it is, you don't have to figure it out alone. You know that, right?" But that was exactly wrong. This was something he did have to figure out alone, because any choice he made would affect 4 lives, his, Lena's, and 2 babies who couldn't speak for themselves. "I need to go," he said. "Adrian, for what it's worth, you're a good person. Even when you're confused, you're good." After hanging up, Adrian started his car and drove toward Lena's neighborhood. He didn't have a plan. Didn't know what he would say or do. But he couldn't spend another night knowing his children were just a few miles away, being raised by a woman who had chosen to keep quiet instead of asking for help. As he turned onto Pine Street, Adrian realized that everything he thought he knew about himself, what was important, what he believed in, how much he could love, was about to be tested in ways he had never imagined. The question wasn't if he was ready. The question was if he was brave enough to try. Adrian sat in his car across from 1247 Pine Street for 45 minutes, watching the old-fashioned apartment building through the evening rain. The building looked well-kept but simple, with flower boxes in the windows and a small yard where someone had planted herbs between the path stones. It was exactly the kind of place Lena would pick, charming, useful, with little touches of beauty that didn't cost much but meant everything. Apartment 3B had a single light on behind thin curtains. Sometimes, a shadow moved past the window. Lena, he guessed, doing her evening routine of taking care of 2 babies. The family feeling of it, the quiet normalness, made his chest feel tight with something he couldn't name. 3 times he reached for the car door handle. 3 times he stopped. What right did he have to mess up the life she had built? She had made her choice carefully, keeping him out, not to be mean, but because she must have thought it was kind. She had known him well enough to understand that being a dad wasn't something he wanted, and she had acted based on that. But sitting here, knowing his children were upstairs, made Adrian realize that what he thought he wanted and what he actually needed might be 2 totally different things. His phone buzzed with a text from his helper. New investors meeting rescheduled for Monday. They weren't happy, but agreed to wait. Monday felt like it belonged to a different life. A life where his biggest worry was how much money his company made, not whether he had the courage to knock on a door and face the most important talk of his life. A movement caught his eye. The building's front door opened, and Lena came out carrying a small bag of trash. She wore jeans and a big sweater, her reddish-brown hair tied back in a messy bun with what looked like a pencil. Even from across the street, Adrian could see how tired she was in the way she moved. Not the dramatic tiredness of someone wanting pity, but the deep-down tiredness of someone who keeps going because there's no other choice. She walked to the dumpster behind the building, and Adrian found himself getting out of his car. By the time she turned around, he was standing 15 feet away on the sidewalk. Lena froze, her face losing all its color. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The Seattle evening stretched between them, filled with the far-off sounds of cars and the soft tapping of rain on leaves. "Adrian," she said finally, her voice careful and calm. "What are you doing here? I saw you yesterday downtown. You were crossing the street." Her hand went straight to her throat, a habit he remembered from their relationship whenever she was trying to understand something difficult. "I didn't see you. You were carrying 2 babies." The words hung in the air between them like a question. Lena's eyes didn't leave his face, but he could see her thinking, figuring out how much truth this moment could handle. "Yes," she said simply. "Are they mine?" The question came out sharper than he meant. But Lena didn't flinch. She looked at him for a long moment, and Adrian saw something in her face he had never seen before, a kind of fierce protection that made her seem like a completely different person from the woman he had lived with. "What do you want me to say, Adrian? I want you to tell me the truth." "The truth?" Lena's voice grew stronger. "The truth is that I'm raising 2 beautiful, healthy children. The truth is that they're happy and loved and don't need anything important. The truth is that their lives are settled and peaceful, and I've worked very hard to make sure they stay that way." "That's not what I asked?" "It's the only answer that matters." Adrian stepped closer, and he saw Lena's shoulders get tense. Not with fear. He had never given her a reason to fear him. But with the kind of protective alertness he imagined came with being a mom. "Don't I have a right to know if I'm a father?" "You have the right to live the life you chose," Lena said quietly. "The life you were very clear about wanting." No problems, no promises, no children tying you down. The words were like real hits, made worse because they were true. He had said those things, or similar things, during their relationship. Whenever talks turned to the future, to the kind of life Lena dreamed about, Adrian had always, honestly, said no. People change, he said. Do they? Lena's green eyes searched his face. Or do they just have regrets when they see what they might have given up? From inside the building, a baby's cry broke the evening quiet. Both Adrian and Lena's heads turned toward the sound, but it was Lena who moved first, her mom instincts taking over everything else. I have to go, she said, already walking toward the building door. Wait. Adrian followed her. Please, just 5 minutes. Let me see them. Lena stopped with her hand on the door handle. Why? Because if they're mine, I need to know. I need to see them. And then what? You decide if you want to be involved based on how you feel right now. You mess up their routine, their feeling of safety, their understanding of their world, because you're curious? The baby's crying grew louder, joined by a second voice. Twins, Adrian realized. His children, he was almost certain now, needing their mom while he stood here demanding answers to questions that might not have good solutions. I hired a private detective, he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. Lena's whole body went still. What? I needed to know for sure, about the timing, about everything. You had me followed? Her voice was barely a whisper, but there was something dangerous in it. I needed to understand. You had me followed while I was caring for my children. Our children? No. Lena's voice cut through the rain like a knife. My children. The children I carried alone, gave birth to alone, and have been raising alone while you've been living exactly the life you told me you wanted. She turned away from him, but Adrian gently caught her arm. Lena, please. I know I handled this wrong. Handled what wrong? She pulled her arm free, but didn't walk away. You didn't handle anything. I handled everything. I decided not to tell you because I knew that you would do exactly this. Show up out of nowhere when it was easy for you, expecting me to explain myself, expecting me to make excuses for choices I made to protect everyone involved. The babies were really crying now, their voices traveling through the building's thin walls. Lena looked toward the sound with clear worry. I have to go to them. Let me come with you, just to see them, just once. Lena looked at his face, and Adrian saw her thinking about his request against everything she had worked to build and protect. Why now? She asked finally. Why, after more than a year of silence, do you suddenly care? It was a fair question, and Adrian realized he didn't have a good answer. Because he had seen her crossing the street and felt something break inside him. Because his carefully built life had suddenly felt empty. Because he was finally brave enough to face what he had been running from. Because I think I've been running from the wrong things, he said finally. And I think you've been protecting me from something I needed to face. Lena looked at him for a long moment, rain starting to darken her sweater. Above them, the crying continued, and Adrian could see her inner struggle. The mom who needed to comfort her children, fighting with the woman who had every right to tell him to leave and never come back. 5 minutes, she said finally. You can see them for 5 minutes, and then you leave. And you think very carefully about what you actually want, not what you think you should want, because I won't let you mess up their lives unless you're absolutely sure you're ready to be in them permanently. Adrian nodded, not trusting his voice. As Lena opened the building door, she paused without looking at him. Their names are Oliver and Emma, she said quietly. Oliver has your eyes. Emma has your stubborn streak. And they are the best thing I've ever done with my life. The words hit Adrian like a huge surprise and a warning all at once. As they climbed the narrow stairs to the 3rd floor, he realized he was about to meet his children for the first time, and maybe say goodbye to them forever, depending on whether he was brave enough to become the man they deserved to have as a father. The apartment was smaller than Adrian's walk-in closet, but every part of it was set up thoughtfully. Soft light came from table lamps instead of ceiling lights, making warm spots throughout the room. Children's books were stacked on a wooden coffee table, and a mobile of pretty paper birds hung over what he thought was the baby's sleeping area. The crying had stopped the moment Lena walked through the door, replaced by happy baby gurgles and the sound of tiny hands slapping against something soft. "They know your voice," Adrian said, surprised by his own words. "They know I always come back," Lena replied, dropping her keys into a small bowl by the door. "Wait here." She disappeared around a corner, and Adrian heard her voice change to the singing way people talk to babies. "I'm here, my loves. Mama's here. Were you telling Oliver a story, Emma? Was it a good one?" The baby's answers were wordless but excited. A chorus of coos and squeaks that made Adrian's chest feel tight in a new way. He had never thought much about the sounds babies made. Had certainly never imagined finding them important. But hearing these particular babies, his babies, their voices felt like a language he was supposed to understand but had never learned. "You can come in now," Lena called. Adrian turned the corner into what must have been the bedroom, though it had been changed into something totally different. The big bed was pushed against one wall, leaving most of the floor space for a large, colorful playmat. Above it, black and white zigzag patterns were taped to the walls. High-contrast pictures Adrian vaguely remembered reading were good for baby brains. But all of that was just in the background because his eyes were completely stuck on the two babies lying on their backs, looking up at him with wide, curious eyes. Oliver was bigger, stronger, with dark hair that stuck up everywhere. His eyes were gray, clearly Adrian's eyes, and he was chewing on his own fist with serious focus. Emma was smaller, more delicate, with reddish-brown hair that caught the light like Lena's. Her green eyes followed Adrian's movement as he stepped closer, and she kicked her legs with clear excitement at having a new person to look at. "Oliver James and Emma Grace," Lena said quietly, sitting crisscross applesauce beside the playmat. "Oliver, Emma, this is—" She stopped, and Adrian realized she had no idea how to introduce him. "This is Adrian." Adrian knelt slowly, afraid that sudden movements might scare them. He had held babies before, nieces and nephews at family parties, friends' kids at company picnics. But this was different. These weren't borrowed babies he would hand back after a few polite minutes. These were his children, looking at him with the completely open curiosity that only babies have. "Can I?" He gestured toward them uncertainly. "Oliver likes his tummy rubbed. Emma prefers when you talk to her." Adrian reached out carefully, placing his hand gently on Oliver's stomach. The baby's eyes widened, and he let go of his fist to grab Adrian's finger with a surprisingly strong grip. The touch sent a jolt through Adrian. This tiny person was holding on to him with complete trust, not knowing anything about the complicated story of his life. "He's strong," Adrian said, his voice rougher than he meant. "He's been holding his head up since 8 weeks. The baby doctor says he's very advanced." Emma made a soft sound, and Adrian turned to look at her. She was studying his face with serious focus, as if she were trying to solve a puzzle. "Hello, Emma," he said softly. "You're beautiful." As if she understood the compliment, Emma smiled. A real smile, not the automatic expressions newborns sometimes made. Her whole face lit up, and she kicked her legs harder, making happy gurgling sounds. Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. "She likes you," Lena observed, though her voice was carefully calm. "How can you tell? She doesn't smile for strangers. It took her 3 weeks to smile for my sister." The meaning hung in the air between them. Emma had smiled for Adrian right away, as if some part of her recognized him, as if something inside her knew to trust this particular face, this particular voice. Oliver was still gripping Adrian's finger, occasionally bringing it toward his mouth to explore with his gums. Adrian found himself amazed by the baby's expressions. Serious concentration when looking at Adrian's watch. A quick worry when a car honked outside. Happiness when Adrian started gently stroking his hair. "What are they like?" Adrian asked. "Their personalities, I mean." Lena was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to share. "Oliver is more physical. He's been trying to roll over since 6 weeks. Gets frustrated when he can't do something right away. Emma is more observant. She watches everything, thinks about it, then usually figures out what Oliver was struggling with on her first try. They're completely different from each other. Oliver wakes up happy, but gets tired fast. Emma takes forever to warm up in the morning, but can keep going for hours once she's awake. Oliver likes baths. Emma hates them. Emma falls asleep easily. Oliver fights it every single night. As if to show, Oliver's eyes were already growing heavy, his grip on Adrian's finger loosening. Emma, meanwhile, was wide awake, still studying Adrian's face like she was memorizing it. She's going to be trouble, Adrian said, unable to stop a smile. I can already tell. She's going to be brilliant, Lena corrected. The trouble will be keeping up with her. For several minutes, they sat in comfortable quiet. Adrian found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't expected, calmed by the simple joy of watching his children discover their world. Oliver had fallen asleep with Adrian's fingers still in his grasp, and Emma had discovered her own feet, grabbing them with delighted focus. This is what you do every day, Adrian said finally. Watch them, learn them, figure out what they need. Among other things. It's not what I expected. Lena looked at him sharply. What did you expect? Adrian struggled to find words. I don't know. More mess, maybe more overwhelming responsibility. This feels... He gestured at the peaceful scene. It feels manageable, natural. That's because you're seeing the good moments, Lena said. You're not here at 2 in the morning when they're both crying and nothing I do helps. You're not here when Emma has a fever and I'm calling the baby doctor in a panic. You're not here when Oliver refuses to eat for 3 days straight and I'm convinced I'm doing everything wrong. The words weren't blaming, just stating facts. But they showed the huge difference between what Adrian was experiencing now and what being a parent actually meant. I could be, he said quietly. Could be what? Here for the hard moments too. Lena was very still. Adrian, I know what I said before. I know what I thought I wanted, but sitting here, looking at them. He gently pulled his finger from Oliver's sleeping grip. I was wrong. About what would make me happy, about what was important. One good moment doesn't erase 18 years of responsibility. I know that. Do you? Because this isn't a business deal you can back out of if it gets difficult. These are people, Adrian. Small people who need things to be steady and reliable and unconditional love. Emma made a soft sound, and both grown-ups looked at her. She was fighting sleep now, her eyes drooping but popping open whenever she started to drift off. She doesn't want to miss anything, Lena said softly. Even when she's tired, she fights sleep because she might miss something interesting. Like her mother. Lena looked at him in surprise. What do you mean? You used to do that during big meetings or when we were traveling. You'd be dead tired but refuse to go to bed because you were afraid you'd miss some conversation or experience. I don't remember you noticing that. I noticed everything about you. I just didn't know how to appreciate it at the time. The honest admission hung between them, full of regret and possibility. Emma finally lost her fight with sleep, her tiny body relaxing into the soft blanket beneath her. Your 5 minutes are up, Lena said quietly. Adrian looked at his children sleeping peacefully on their playmat. Oliver with his serious little face. Emma with her determined chin already visible even at 4 months old. They were perfect, and they were his. And he had missed the first 4 months of their lives because he had been too scared to want them. What happens now? He asked. Now you leave, and you decide what you actually want your life to look like. Not what you think you should want, not what's easy, but what will make you happy in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Adrian stood slowly, not wanting to break the peaceful scene. And if I decide I want to be part of this? Then we'll figure out how to make that work. But Adrian. Lena stood too, facing him across their sleeping children. I won't let you be a part-time father. I won't let you just pop in and out of their lives when it's easy for you. If you want this, you have to want all of it. The sleepless nights, the endless worry, the complete change of everything you thought your life would be. And if I want all of it, For the first time since he had arrived, Lena's carefully controlled expression softened a little. Then we'll start slowly, carefully. And we'll see if the man you are now can become the father they deserve. As Adrian walked toward the door, he turned back for one last look at Oliver and Emma. They slept with the complete peace of children who were completely sure they were loved. He wanted to be part of making that safety. He wanted to be someone they could count on. The question was whether he was brave enough to completely change his life to make that possible. Adrian didn't go home. Instead, he drove to Cary Park, a small hilltop that had the best view of Seattle's skyline. At this late hour, the park was almost empty, except for a few late-night photographers capturing the city lights reflecting in the bay. He sat on a bench facing the view that had always helped him think clearly. But tonight, the familiar sight offered no answers. His phone had been buzzing steadily for the past hour. Cassie had called twice. David had sent 3 texts about rescheduled meetings. And his helper had forwarded urgent emails that normally would have had his immediate attention. But all of it felt like noise from a world that suddenly seemed very far away. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emma's smile, Oliver's serious focus as he looked at Adrian's face, the way Lena had moved around them with such natural skill, knowing what they needed before they even showed it. His children. He had children. The thought still felt unreal. But beneath the disbelief was something else, a feeling of rightness that he had never experienced before. Holding Oliver's tiny hand, watching Emma's eyes follow his every move, felt like finding a part of himself he hadn't known was missing. But wanting something and being able to do it were 2 different things. Adrian's phone rang, and he almost ignored it until he saw the caller ID. His father. "Dad? Adrian, I've been trying to reach you all day," his father said. "David told me you canceled the big Portland meeting." Richard Cole was not a man who called without a reason. At 68, he was still smart, direct, and always a little disappointed that his only son had chosen clean energy over the family's traditional oil businesses. Their relationship had always been polite but distant, built on respect for each other's business smarts, but not much warmth. Something came up. Something more important than a $40 million new deal. Adrian almost laughed. 24 hours ago, he would have said nothing was more important than that deal. Now, he wasn't sure it was even in his top 10 worries. "Dad, can I ask you something?" There was a pause. Adrian never asked his father for advice, and they both knew it. "Of course. When I was born, were you ready to be a father?" The silence stretched long enough that Adrian wondered if the call had dropped. "That's an unusual question," Richard said finally. "Why do you ask?" I'm trying to understand something about choices versus duties." "Adrian, is there something you need to tell me?" The chance was there. Adrian could explain everything: Lena, the babies, the impossible decision he was facing. His father had been a parent, had somehow managed to build a successful company while raising a child. Maybe he had ideas that could help. But even as the thought came, Adrian pushed it away. His father's way of being a dad had been good at providing, but not very warm, present for big moments but absent for daily struggles. Successful by usual standards, but lacking the kind of warmth Adrian had seen in Lena's interactions with Oliver and Emma. "No," Adrian said. "Just thinking about some life changes." "Well, if you're thinking about big changes, remember that always sticking with it builds empires. Your mother and I have been married 42 years because we decided to be married, not because we felt like it every day. Success in anything needs commitment beyond feelings." After hanging up, Adrian sat with his father's words. Commit beyond feelings. It was exactly the kind of practical advice that had guided Adrian's entire grown-up life. Make choices based on logic. Stick with them no matter how you feel right now. Build something lasting through hard work rather than just excitement. But was that what Oliver and Emma needed? A father who showed up because he had to, rather than because he loved them? His phone buzzed with a text from Cassie. "Thinking about you. Whatever you're going through, you don't have to decide everything tonight." She was right. But Adrian felt the pressure of time in a way he never had before. Every day he waited was another day of Oliver and Emma's lives he would miss. Another day of Lena managing everything alone. Another day of his children growing up without him. But rushing into a decision this important could be even worse than waiting. Adrian drove home finally, but sleep was impossible. He found himself in his home office staring at money predictions for the Portland deal that had seemed so important yesterday. The numbers were good, the market looked promising, the possible earnings were huge. None of it mattered. By morning, Adrian had made a list, not a good and bad points list. This wasn't a business choice that could be measured with numbers. It was a list of what would need to change if he chose to be a real father to Oliver and Emma. His work schedule would have to be completely redone. 18-hour days and last-minute trips would be impossible with children who needed things to be steady. His fancy penthouse apartment would need to be made safe for kids, or even better, traded for something more family-friendly. His social life, his hobbies, his carefully kept independence. All of it would come second to the needs of two small people who had no one else to depend on. The list was scary, but as Adrian read through it, he realized something surprising. None of the changes felt like giving things up. They felt like chances to become someone better than he was right now. At 7 a.m., he called David. "Adrian, thank goodness. I've been answering calls all morning about yesterday's cancellations. I need to change my job in the company." "What does that mean?" "It means I want to step back from the daily work, focus on big plans and long-term goals, but get rid of the constant travel and emergency meetings." David was quiet for so long that Adrian checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Are you having some kind of breakdown?" David asked finally. "I'm having some kind of breakthrough, David. We're about to have the biggest growth in the company's history. This isn't the time to do less. This is exactly the time. We've built something successful enough to run without me looking over every decision. If it can't survive my stepping back, then we haven't built it right." After a long talk, David agreed to a trial period. Adrian would stay as the boss and main investor, but would let his top team handle the daily work. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. His next call was to his real estate agent. "I want to sell the penthouse," Adrian said without an intro. "And I need you to help me find something else." "Okay, what are you looking for?" Adrian thought about Lena's apartment, about how every corner had been set up with children in mind. A house. 3 bedrooms minimum. Good schools nearby. A yard. Somewhere a family would be happy. The real estate agent sounded confused but professional. "Of course. When do you want to start looking?" "Today." By afternoon, Adrian had seen 6 houses in neighborhoods that were good for families all over Seattle. The old Victorian house with original wood floors. The cozy bungalow with a garden perfect for children to explore. The modern townhouse close to Lena's apartment. None of them felt like home the way his penthouse had. But that was the whole point. Home wasn't supposed to be a monument to his personal success anymore. It was supposed to be a place where Oliver and Emma could grow up safely, where Lena would feel welcome, where a family could make memories together. As evening came, Adrian found himself parked outside Lena's building again. But this time, he wasn't there to demand answers or just be curious. He was there to make a promise. He climbed the stairs to apartment 3B and knocked softly. Lena opened the door wearing the same tired look he had seen the night before. But when she saw Adrian, her face changed to a deeper tiredness. "It's been less than 24 hours," she said. "I know, but I couldn't wait. Adrian, I want all of it," he said quickly before she could send him away. "The sleepless nights, the worry, the complete change of my life. I want to be their father. Not part-time, not when it's easy, but really be their father." Lena studied his face, looking for something. Certainty, maybe? Or proof that this wasn't just a quick decision he would regret when things got real. "What does that look like to you?" she asked finally. "Being their father?" "I don't know yet," Adrian admitted. "But I want to learn. I want to be someone they can count on. Someone who shows up for them even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." From inside the apartment came the sound of babies waking from naps, their voices joining in the kind of harmony that only twins could create. Lena looked toward the sound, then back at Adrian. This isn't going to be easy for any of us. I know I'm not the same person I was when we were together. Being their mother has changed me in ways that make some things not changeable. I'm counting on that. For the first time since he had appeared at her door, Lena smiled. Not the careful, controlled look she had been wearing, but something real and a little hopeful. Then I guess we'd better figure out how to do this right. As she opened the door wider to let him in, Adrian realized he was crossing more than just a doorstep. He was stepping into a life that would demand everything from him and give him everything in return. The thought should have scared him. Instead, it felt like coming home. 3 weeks into their careful new plan, Adrian discovered that being a father was nothing like running a company. Babies, he learned, did not respond to money goals, rules for being efficient, or logical thinking. They responded to patience he didn't know he had and love he was still learning how to show. She's been crying for 20 minutes, Adrian said, gently bouncing Emma against his chest while walking around Lena's living room. I've tried everything. Bottle, diaper, burping, that thing you do with the white noise app. Lena looked up from where she was feeding Oliver. Tiredness showed in every part of her body. The past 3 weeks had been a big change for all of them. Adrian had been coming by every evening after work, staying later each night, learning the tricky ways of caring for 2 babies. Sometimes they just need to cry, Lena said softly. It's how they figure out their world. But there has to be something I can do. Some solution. The solution is accepting that you can't solve everything. It was a lesson Adrian was learning in many parts of his life. His work changes had been harder than he thought. Letting his team control the daily operations felt like watching his children, his other children, he corrected himself, take their first steps without him there to catch them if they fell. Emma's cries began to quiet, and Adrian realized she had fallen asleep against his shoulder. The weight of her tiny body, the trust in the way she completely relaxed in his arms, still amazed him. You're getting better at this, Lena observed. I had a good teacher. The past 3 weeks had been like a master class in taking care of babies, with Lena patiently explaining everything from how to hold a bottle just right to the tiny differences between Emma's various cries. Adrian had filled 2 notebooks with notes, treating fatherhood with the same organized way he handled business projects. But unlike business, the most important lessons couldn't be written down. I found a house, Adrian said quietly, settling into the chair beside Lena's couch. The old-fashioned one in Wallingford. 4 bedrooms, big kitchen, yard with space for a swing set. Lena's hand stopped rubbing Oliver's back. They had been talking around the idea of living together for days, either wanting to push too fast, but both knowing that the current situation couldn't last forever. That's wonderful, she said carefully. When do you buy it? I haven't made an offer yet. Why not? Adrian looked at Emma sleeping in his arms, then at Oliver happily drinking his bottle. Because I don't want to just guess what you want, what would work for you and the babies. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Adrian, we need to talk about what we're doing here. The words sent a shiver through Adrian. For 3 weeks, they had been avoiding the bigger questions, their relationship, their future, the real challenges of raising children together when they weren't together as a couple. Okay, he said. This plan we have now, with you coming by in the evenings, it's working for Oliver and Emma. They're starting to recognize you, to expect you. Emma reaches for you when she sees you. Oliver calms down when he hears your voice. But what? But I need to know what happens when this stops feeling new and exciting. When you've been up all night with a baby who's getting new teeth and you have an important meeting the next day. When we disagree about rules or schools or 1,000 other choices parents have to make together. Adrian shifted Emma to his other arm, giving himself time to think of a good answer. These were the questions that kept him awake at night. Not whether he loved his children, that had become super clear, but whether love would be enough when the daily challenges of sharing parenting tested every idea they had about being able to get along. I won't lie and say it will be easy, he said finally. But Lena, 3 weeks ago, I thought success meant never having to think about anyone else's needs when making decisions. Now, I can't imagine making any decision without thinking about how it affects Oliver and Emma. That's not what I'm asking. Then what are you asking? Lena lifted Oliver to her shoulder and began rubbing his back in slow circles. I'm asking whether you're ready to do this even when we disagree. Even when I make parenting choices you don't understand. Even when being a family means giving up on things you're not used to giving up on. The question hit at the heart of Adrian's deepest fear. Not that he would fail as a father, but that his years of making his own decisions had left him unable to be the kind of partner that good shared parenting needed. I don't know, he said honestly, but I want to find out. Before Lena could answer, Adrian's phone rang. The screen showed David's number, and Adrian didn't answer it. You can take it if you need to, Lena said. No. This is my time with you and the babies. But the phone rang again right away, followed by a text. Emergency. Portland deal falling apart. Need you now. Adrian looked at the message, then at Emma, sleeping peacefully in his arms. 6 months ago, he would have handed the baby to Lena and rushed to the office without a second thought. Tonight? He turned the phone off. Adrian, if it's important. Nothing is more important than this, he said, and he meant it completely. The moment felt special, but before either of them could talk about it, Oliver started crying against Lena's shoulder. She stood to walk him, but Adrian noticed her slight wince as she rose. Your back is hurting again. It's fine. It's not fine. You've been carrying both of them constantly for months. Let me help. I mean really help. Move in with me. Not because of us, but because of them. They need things to be steady, and you need help. The words hung in the air between them, full of meanings neither had been willing to talk about directly. Adrian, I know it's complicated. I know we have history that makes this messier than it should be. But put that aside for a minute and think about what would be best for Oliver and Emma. Lena was quiet, gently swaying as Oliver's crying stopped. What would that look like? In real life, I mean? You and the babies would have the biggest bedroom. I'd take one of the smaller bedrooms. We'd share the living room and kitchen, share parenting duties, but still have our own space otherwise. Like roommates who happen to share children. Like parents who are committed to making this work no matter if we figure out the rest. It wasn't romantic, but it was honest. Neither of them was ready to deal with the tricky feelings of starting their romantic relationship again while learning to be parents together. But they were both ready to put their children's needs first over their own unsureness. I need time to think about it, Lena said. Of course. Emma stirred in Adrian's arms, making the soft mewing sounds that meant she was waking up. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on Adrian's face with the kind of complete attention that babies give to everything they find interesting. Hi, beautiful girl, he whispered. Did you have a good nap? Emma's response was a smile that lit up her entire face, followed by excited leg kicks that made Adrian laugh. She definitely knows you now, Lena observed, and there was something in her voice that made Adrian look up. What? You're different with them than you were with me. More patient, more present. Maybe because I finally understand what's important. Or maybe because babies don't ask for things that scare you. The comment stung because it was true. Babies needed basic care, attention, and love. All things Adrian was learning to provide. But they didn't ask for emotional honesty, long-term commitment, or the kind of deep connection that had scared him during his relationship with Lena. You're right, he said. It's easier to love them than it was to love you. Lena looked surprised by his honesty. But, Adrian continued, maybe that's because loving you meant risking everything I thought I knew about myself. Loving them means becoming everything I never knew I could be. Oliver had fallen asleep against Lena's chest, and she settled back onto the couch beside Adrian. For several minutes, they sat in comfortable quiet, each holding a sleeping baby, both lost in their own thoughts about the impossibly complex task of building a family from the pieces of a broken relationship. The house in Wallingford, Lena said finally. Does it have a good kitchen? Adrian's heart jumped. Large kitchen island, gas stove, plenty of counter space. And the yard? Big enough for a playground, old trees. The neighbors have kids. Lena nodded slowly. I'd want to see it before deciding anything, of course. And we need clear rules about space, about what we expect, about what happens if this arrangement doesn't work. Whatever you need. As if feeling how important the moment was, both babies chose that instant to wake up at the same time, their eyes bright and awake as they looked between their parents. I think they're voting yes, Adrian said softly. For the first time in weeks, Lena laughed. A real laugh, not the careful answers she had been giving him since he reappeared in her life. I think they might be, she agreed, looking at his family. Because that's what they were, he realized, no matter how complicated things were. Adrian felt a peace he had never experienced in any boardroom or business deal. This was what success actually looked like. The house in Wallingford was everything Adrian had described and more. Lena stood in the big kitchen, watching morning light pour through tall windows onto countertops where she could easily imagine making bottles while keeping an eye on the babies in the next room. The master bedroom upstairs was larger than her entire current apartment, with built-in bookshelves and a window seat that would be perfect for late-night feedings. The previous owners had 3 children, the real estate agent explained, pointing out safety features Lena hadn't even thought to look for. All the outlets are already safe for kids, and there are safety gates and storage in the basement. Emma gurgled happily from her baby carrier, while Oliver slept against Adrian's chest in the baby wrap he had learned to use with surprising skill. Watching him move around the house so easily, Lena could almost imagine this working, the 3 of them building something stable and peaceful for the children. What do you think? Adrian asked quietly as they stood in what would be the nursery. I think it's perfect for them, Lena said. Because it was true. I think they could be happy here. Lena touched the window frame, looking out at the backyard where old oak trees provided shade for what would someday be a playground. But I need to know that you're not doing this just because you feel guilty. What do you mean? I mean that guilt is a terrible base for a family. If you're trying to make up for missing the first months of their lives, or if you're trying to prove something to yourself about what kind of man you are, then this won't work in the long run. Adrian adjusted Oliver's position, his expression thoughtful. You're asking if I'm doing this for them or for me. I'm asking if you've really thought about what happens in 2 years when the newness wears off. When they're toddlers getting into everything and you can't get any work done at home. When they're teenagers and you disagree with my parenting choices. The real estate agent had quietly moved to another room, giving them privacy for what was clearly a very important conversation. Lena, Adrian said carefully, I can't predict how I'll feel in 2 years. But I can tell you that every morning for the past 3 weeks, the first thing I think about when I wake up is whether Oliver slept through the night, and if Emma's cough is getting better. I can tell you that I rescheduled a board meeting yesterday because it conflicted with Emma's 6-month checkup. 6-month checkup isn't for another week. I know. I put it in my calendar so I wouldn't miss it. The admission was so unexpectedly sweet that Lena felt her carefully kept emotional walls soften. Adrian was trying so hard to be the father he thought Oliver and Emma deserved, even when he didn't fully understand what that meant yet. The house is beautiful, she said finally. If you're sure this is what you want, then yes, we should try living together. For them? Adrian's smile was bright, and for a moment, Lena saw the man she had fallen in love with 2 years ago. Not the successful businessman or the overwhelmed new father, but the person underneath who was capable of joy when he allowed himself to feel it. 2 hours later, as they loaded the babies back into Adrian's car, he had traded his sports car for a family-friendly SUV without being asked. Lena's phone rang. Lena Hart, this is Dr. Patricia Montgomery from Children's Hospital. I'm calling about your application for the marketing director position. Lena's heart jumped. The job at Children's Hospital would be perfect. Full-time with good benefits, meaningful work, and a schedule that would allow for school pickup and sick days. She had interviewed 3 weeks ago but hadn't heard back. Yes, of course. I'm pleased to offer you the position. The salary is $68,000 a year, plus full medical and dental benefits. When would you be able to start? Lena felt Adrian's eyes on her as she thought about the offer. Money, stability, a fulfilling job, independence she hadn't had since the babies were born. That's wonderful news. I start in 2 weeks? I need to arrange childcare. Of course, I'll have HR send over the paperwork. Congratulations, Lena. We're excited to have you join the team. After hanging up, Lena realized her hands were shaking. Good news? Adrian asked, though something in his voice suggested he had already guessed. The job at Children's Hospital. They offered me the position. That's incredible. It's exactly what you wanted. Adrian knew how much this meant to her. The change from freelance marketing work to a stable full-time job with real benefits and job security. But instead of celebration, attention filled the car because both of them realized that Lena accepting a full-time job would make their careful living arrangement much more complicated. $68,000, Lena said mostly to herself. With benefits. I could actually support us properly instead of scrambling for freelance work every month. You know money isn't an issue, right? For any of us. Lena looked at him sharply. It's an issue for me. Why? Because I need to know that I can take care of them myself if I have to. Because I need to know that my choices aren't forced by needing money from you. Adrian was quiet for several blocks, thinking about this. You still don't trust me. I trust you with them, Lena said, gesturing toward the babies. But trusting you as a father and trusting you as a partner are different things. I'm not asking to be your partner. I'm asking to be their father and your co-parent. Those lines aren't as clear as you think they are. They were approaching Lena's neighborhood when Adrian's phone started buzzing loudly. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's David. Third call today. Take it, please. I know the Portland deal is important. Adrian hesitated, then answered on speaker. David. Thank goodness, Adrian. We have a serious problem. The Portland investors are completely backing out. They're saying the lack of consistent leadership from our CEO shows instability in the company. Lena saw Adrian's jaw tighten. What does that mean specifically? It means they think your recent absence suggests you're not fully committed to the expansion. They're concerned about investing $40 million in a company whose leadership seems distracted. I haven't been distracted. I've been delegating appropriately. Delegating or disappearing? Because from the outside, it looks like you've checked out right when we need you most. Adrian pulled into a parking space outside Lena's building and turned off the engine. In the back seat, Oliver had woken up and was making the soft sounds that meant he would need feeding soon. What do you need from me? Adrian asked. I need you to come to Portland tomorrow. Meet with the investors face to face. Reassure them that you're still fully invested in coal renewable energy's future. Lena watched Adrian's face as he thought about the request. Tomorrow was Saturday. They had planned to start moving her things to the Wallingford house to begin the process of becoming a real family. I can't tomorrow, Adrian said finally. Adrian! This is $40 million. This is the expansion that takes us national. This is everything we've been working toward. I understand that, but I have other priorities now. David's silence stretched uncomfortably long. Other priorities? Yes, Adrian. I'm going to ask you directly, are you having some kind of personal crisis? Because if you are, we can work around it. Take some time, get whatever help you need, but don't sink the company because you're going through something. Lena reached over and gently touched Adrian's arm. Go, she whispered. The house will still be there next week. No, Adrian said firmly, both to David and to Lena. David set up a video conference with the Portland investors. Monday morning 9 a.m. I'll handle it remotely. A video call isn't going to. Then they weren't serious investors to begin with. Any company worth doing business with will understand that their CEO has a life outside the office. After hanging up, Adrian sat staring at the phone in his hands. You should go to Portland, Lena said quietly. I told you I have other priorities. Adrian looked at her. He turned to face her, and Lena saw the conflict in his eyes. The man he used to be fighting with the man he was trying to become. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said gently. "You're trying so hard to prove you're committed to being a father, that you're making choices that aren't sustainable. If you destroy your company trying to prove your devotion to us, you'll resent us eventually. That's not what's happening. Isn't it? 3 weeks ago, you told me that being Oliver and Emma's father would require changing your entire life. But changing doesn't mean abandoning. It means finding balance." Oliver's soft sounds had grown into proper crying, and Emma was beginning to stir in sympathy. Lena got out to retrieve them, leaving Adrian alone with his thoughts and the sound of his children needing attention. When she returned with both babies, Adrian was staring at the house where they had planned to start their life together. "Go to Portland," Lena said again. "Show them that you're still the CEO they invested in. Show me that you can be a devoted father without giving up everything else that makes you who you are. And if I go, what does that mean for us?" Lena looked at Oliver and Emma, both now calm in her arms, then back at Adrian. "It means we figure out what a real partnership looks like. Not one where you try too hard to make up for past mistakes, and not one where I'm afraid to ask for what I need. It means we start over honestly this time." As Adrian drove away toward his own apartment to pack for Portland, Lena realized that their future together, whatever it looked like, would depend not on big gestures or dramatic sacrifices, but on their ability to build something lasting from the complicated truth of who they actually were. The question was whether they were both brave enough to try. Adrian stood in the Portland Marriott conference room, looking out at the city's skyline while the investors reviewed his updated plan. 18 hours ago, he had been planning to move boxes and set up a baby room. Now, he was fighting to save the deal that would decide his company's future. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Mr. Cole," Margaret Chen, the main investor, said as the team finished their discussion, "we appreciate you coming on such short notice, but I have to be honest. We're concerned about the mixed signals we're receiving regarding your commitment to this expansion." "What kind of mixed signals?" 3 weeks ago, you were personally handling every detail of this negotiation. Then suddenly, you're delegating everything, missing calls, rescheduling meetings. Yesterday, your business partner had to tell us you were unavailable due to personal matters. Adrian had prepared for this conversation during the flight to Portland. But sitting here now, facing the close look of people who held his company's future in their hands, he realized he had a choice to make about which version of himself to present. The old Adrian would have made up an excuse that kept his image as a completely dedicated CEO. The new Adrian, the father, the man trying to build something real with Lena and his children, didn't want to lie anymore. "You're right," he said simply. "My priorities have shifted recently." The silence in the room was immediate and uncomfortable. "Could you explain that?" asked James Wong, another investor. Adrian thought about Oliver's tiny hand gripping his finger, about Emma's smile when she saw him walk through the door, about Lena's tired face as she managed 2 babies alone for months while he lived his uncomplicated life. "I'm a father," he said, "to 4-month-old twins I didn't know existed until a month ago. I'm learning what that means, and it's changed how I think about everything, including how I run my company." Margaret leaned forward. "That's not what we expected you to say. I'm not the same man who started these negotiations 6 months ago. I'm more focused, more efficient, and more committed to building something lasting rather than something that requires me to sacrifice everything else that matters." "Mr. Cole," James interrupted, "we're investing in coal renewable energy, not your personal journey of self-discovery. Actually, you're investing in me, in my judgment, my leadership, my ability to make decisions that serve the long-term interests of the company. And I'm telling you that becoming a father has made me a better leader, not a distracted one." Adrian stood and moved to the whiteboard, his confidence growing as he found his footing in this conversation. 6 months ago, I was working 18-hour days because I thought that's what success looked like. I was making every decision personally because I thought delegating was a weakness. I was sacrificing my health, my relationships, and my perspective because I confused being busy with being effective. He began writing on the board. efficiency, sustainability, long-term thinking. Now I work 10-hour days and accomplish more because I'm forced to prioritize ruthlessly. I've delegated operational control to my senior team, and our productivity has increased by 23%. Because they're empowered to make decisions quickly instead of waiting for my approval. I'm thinking about legacy instead of just quarterly returns. Margaret was taking notes. Those are interesting points, but how do we know this isn't temporary? How do we know that in 6 months you won't burn out trying to balance everything? Adrian's phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Oliver took his first bottle from someone other than me today. With my sister. He's growing up. How's Portland? The message hit him with unexpected force. He was missing things right now. While he stood in this conference room defending his choices, his son was reaching small milestones that Adrian wouldn't witness. But instead of panic, Adrian felt clarity. You don't know, he told the investors. Just like I don't know if any of you will still be committed to renewable energy in 6 months when oil prices drop or government support changes. What I can tell you is that I'm more motivated now than I've ever been to build something lasting, because it's not just about me anymore. He turned back to the whiteboard and wrote, Purpose. Coal Renewable Energy isn't just my company anymore. It's my children's inheritance. It's the world I'm building for them to live in. Every decision I make now is filtered through the question, will this create the kind of future I want Oliver and Emma to inherit? The room was quiet, except for the sound of pens on paper. The Portland expansion isn't just about market share, Adrian continued. It's about establishing clean energy systems that will be serving communities when my children are adults. It's about building a company culture that values both excellence and humanity, because those are the values I want to model for them. Adrian's phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from Lena, Emma sitting in her bouncy seat, grinning at something off camera while Oliver slept peacefully in the background. The image of his children happy and safe while he was 300 miles away filled him with an emotion he couldn't name. Gentlemen, Miss Chin, he said, putting his phone away without responding to the text. I'm not asking you to invest in my personal transformation. I'm asking you to invest in a company led by someone who finally understands what success actually means. Margaret closed her notebook. Mr. Cole, could you give us a few minutes to discuss this privately? Of course. Adrian stepped into the hallway, his heart pounding. He had either just secured the biggest deal in his company's history by being completely honest about his priorities, or he had destroyed everything by admitting that his attention was divided. His phone rang. Lena's name appeared on the screen. How did it go? She asked without preamble. I told them about Oliver and Emma. You what? I told them I'm a father, and that it's made me better at my job, not worse. Lena was quiet for a long moment. How did they react? I don't know yet. They're discussing it now. Adrian, I know it was risky, but I'm tired of pretending that caring about my family makes me less capable professionally. If they can't understand that, then they're not the right partners anyway. And if they walk away? Adrian thought about the question seriously. 6 months ago, losing this deal would have felt like the end of the world. Now, standing in a hotel hallway 300 miles from his children, he realized that the end of the world would be losing them, not losing a business opportunity. Then we find other investors, ones who understand that the best leaders are the ones who have something meaningful to fight for. The conference room door opened, and Margaret gestured for him to return. I have to go, Adrian told Lena. But whatever happens here, I want you to know. This trip showed me that being away from you and the babies doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like missing the most important parts of my life. Adrian, I love you, he said, the words surprising him even as he spoke them. I love our children, and I love what we could build together if we're both brave enough to try. He hung up before she could respond and walked back into the conference room. The investors were smiling. Mr. Cole, Margaret said, we've decided to move forward with the investment, but with one condition. Adrian's heart stopped. What condition? We want to meet your children, James said with a grin. Any man who can turn fatherhood into a business philosophy this compelling probably has some pretty special kids. 3 hours later, Adrian was back on a plane to Seattle. Contract signed, future secured. But more importantly, he was going home to a life that finally felt worth living. As the plane lifted off, Adrian realized that the most successful deal he had ever made wasn't the one he had just signed in Portland. It was convincing himself that he deserved the love of a woman like Lena and children like Oliver and Emma. Now, he just had to hope it wasn't too late to convince them of the same thing. 2 years later, Saturday morning in the big house in Wallingford was super busy. Emma sat in her high chair, carefully throwing pieces of banana onto the kitchen floor while shouting, "No, no, no!" with each throw. Oliver, meanwhile, had found that climbing onto the coffee table gave him the perfect spot to look over his kingdom, even though he'd been told at least 50 times that tables were not for climbing. "Oliver James Cole, get down!" Lena called from the kitchen, where she was packing diaper bags and trying to drink coffee that had been cold for an hour. "We've talked about this." Adrian appeared from upstairs, his hair still wet from the shower, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that somehow made him look younger than he had in any of his expensive suits. "I'll get him." "Emma, beautiful girl, food goes in your mouth, not on the floor." Emma's answer was to beam at her dad and immediately throw another piece of banana, as if to show that she understood the rule but found her way much more fun. "She's testing the rules," Lena observed, a little impressed. At 2 years old, Emma had a personality that was a mix of charm and stubbornness, a combo Adrian insisted she got entirely from her mom. "She's going to be a CEO someday," Adrian said, lifting Oliver from the coffee table and guiding him toward his toy cars. "The way she asks for extra stories at bedtime shows real leadership potential." "She's going to be whatever she wants to be," Lena corrected, but she was smiling. This was a running joke between them, Adrian seeing business smarts in every toddler action, Lena insisting their children be allowed to find their own paths. The kitchen was bigger than Lena's whole first apartment, but it felt warm rather than grand. The island was covered with the morning mess, sippy cups, Oliver's favorite stuffed elephant, Emma's hair clips, important papers from Adrian's office that always seemed to end up in family spaces, and Lena's work laptop, which she used for her job as communications boss at Children's Hospital. It was chaos, but it was their chaos. "Coffee," Adrian said, appearing next to Lena with a fresh cup made exactly the way she liked it. "And before you say you don't have time, we have 45 minutes before we need to leave for the park." "You don't have to manage my coffee," Lena said. But she took the coffee thankfully. "I don't have to. I want to." It was a small difference that had taken them months to figure out. The difference between Adrian trying to solve her problems and Adrian wanting to make her life easier, between control and care, between something he had to do and something he chose to do. The house around them told the story of how they had learned to mix their lives. Adrian's simple style had changed to make room for toy bins and colorful artwork. Lena's practical decorating had grown to include a few pieces of art that served no purpose except beauty. The master bedroom they shared, after 6 months of careful, slow steps from co-parenting roommates to something more, showed both of their personalities without erasing either. "Daddy up!" Oliver waddled over to Adrian, arms raised in the universal toddler request. "Use your words, buddy." "What do you want?" "Up, please, Daddy." Adrian lifted his son, who immediately began chattering in a mix of real words and toddler talk that somehow made perfect sense within the family, but would be impossible for outsiders to understand. Oliver had grown into an affectionate, energetic child who approached everything with excitement, climbing, eating, playing, and especially talking to anyone who would listen. "He's telling you about the garbage truck," Lena translated. "He's been waiting all week for Saturday morning pickup." "Ah, yes, the garbage truck. Very important business." Emma, having finished her banana-throwing experiment, began clapping and calling, "Mama, Mama!" with the kind of urgency that suggested the world might end if her needs weren't immediately addressed. "I think someone wants to be cleaned up," Adrian observed. "I think someone wants attention," Lena corrected, but she moved to lift Emma from the high chair. You just don't like being left out of the conversation, do you, sweet girl? Emma's response was to wrap her arms around Lena's neck and plant a wet, banana-flavored kiss on her cheek, a gesture that never failed to melt any frustration about the morning's chaos. This was their routine now. Organized but flexible, busy but not crazy. Adrian had learned to plan his work schedule around school pickup and doctor appointments. Lena had learned to accept help without feeling like she was losing independence. Both had learned that building a family meant constant talks, frequent forgiveness, and a daily choice to put each other's happiness first. Your sister called, Adrian said, settling Oliver in his lap while Lena cleaned Emma's face. She wants to know if we're still bringing the kids to her barbecue tomorrow. Of course. Why wouldn't we be? Because last time Oliver tried to feed potato salad to her dog, and Emma had a complete meltdown when we tried to leave. That's what family barbecues are for, chaos and meltdowns. Adrian smiled, remembering his worry during their first family gatherings. He had wanted the children to be perfectly behaved, had worried that any sign of normal toddler behavior would be seen as proof that he was failing as a father. Lena had eventually convinced him that love meant accepting the full reality of who their children were, not trying to force them into some perfect version. Speaking of family, Lena said carefully, your parents called yesterday. They want to visit next month. Adrian's relationship with his parents had grown slowly, and sometimes painfully over the past 2 years. Richard and Patricia Cole were not naturally warm people, but they had made real efforts to understand their son's changed priorities. Oliver and Emma had helped close the generation gap. It was hard to stay emotionally distant when faced with 2 toddlers who demanded interaction. Even Cassie had reached out 6 months after Adrian and Lena began building their life together, not out of romantic interest, but from true friendship. She had sent a beautiful photography book about families with a note that said simply, "You found what you were really looking for. I'm happy for you." Adrian had appreciated her grace and understanding that their brief relationship had been exactly what he needed to realize what he actually wanted. How long do they want to stay? A week. Your mother specifically asked for time to teach Emma how to bake cookies. Emma is 2. Apparently your mother doesn't consider that a problem. Adrian laughed, imagining his elegant mother covered in flour while Emma helped in the kitchen. The picture would have been impossible to imagine 2 years ago, but parenthood had changed everyone's definitions of what mattered. Okay, he said. A week it is. Really? You're not going to worry about work schedules and whether the house is clean enough? I've learned to worry about more important things. Like whether he was setting a good example for Oliver about how to treat women. Like whether Emma would grow up believing she could accomplish anything she set her mind to. Like whether he and Lena were building the kind of marriage that would give their children safety and teach them what love actually looked like. What are you thinking about? Lena asked, recognizing the expression Adrian wore when he was processing something important. Just this. Adrian gestured at the kitchen scene around them. 2 years ago, I thought success meant having complete control over my environment. Now I think success means doing well in chaos. Is that what we're doing? Doing well? Adrian looked around the room at Emma happily babbling while playing with measuring spoons, at Oliver building elaborate structures with wooden blocks, at Lena moving through it all with the kind of skillful grace that made everything seem manageable even when it shouldn't be. Yeah, he said. I think we are. The park trip was everything Adrian had learned to expect from family outings with toddlers, delightful and tiring in equal measure. Oliver approached the playground like he was doing science research, trying out every piece of equipment carefully. Emma made friends with every child she met, charming parents and siblings alike with her big smiles and surprising words. Lena spread a blanket under an oak tree while Adrian pushed both children on the baby swings, marveling, as he did every weekend, at how much joy they could get from something so simple. "Daddy, higher!" Oliver called. "Me swing," Emma added, not to be outdone by her brother's clear communication. "Higher and faster," Adrian confirmed. The 2 main requests of childhood. From the blanket, Lena watched her family with a contentment she had never imagined possible. During those first lonely months of motherhood, Adrian had become the father she had hoped he might be, but hadn't dared expect, present, patient, endlessly interested in the small details of their children's growth. But more than that, he had become a partner in the truest sense. Someone who shared not just the pleasant moments, but the difficult ones. Someone who could handle a toddler meltdown in the grocery store without panic, and who remembered which songs helped Emma fall asleep when she was teething. "Mama, look!" Emma called from the swing, having spotted a dog walking past the playground. "I see, baby. What a pretty dog." "Doggy!" Oliver echoed. Because at 2 years old, he was convinced that any word Emma found important was worth repeating. Adrian lifted both children from the swings and guided them toward the blanket, where they immediately began exploring the snacks Lena had packed. Watching them share crackers, Oliver carefully breaking his in half to give Emma the bigger piece, Adrian felt the same sense of wonder that struck him regularly about the small people they were raising. "They're going to be okay," he said quietly, settling beside Lena on the blanket. "More than okay," Lena agreed. "They're going to be extraordinary. Not because of anything we do specifically, just because of who they are." It was one of the hardest lessons of parenthood, learning to appreciate their children for themselves rather than as extensions of parental hopes and fears. Oliver's careful nature and Emma's bold curiosity were qualities to be nurtured, not problems to be solved. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't seen me that day?" Lena asked. "If you had just driven past without recognizing me?" Adrian considered the question seriously. "I think I would have figured it out eventually. Maybe not as quickly, and maybe not in time to be part of their early lives, but I think some part of me always knew that the life I was living wasn't complete." "You sound very confident for someone who spent a year convinced he didn't want children." "I wasn't convinced I didn't want children. I was convinced I would be terrible at being a father. There's a difference." "And now?" Adrian looked at Oliver, who was trying to feed crackers to a nearby squirrel, and Emma, who was attempting to braid grass with the serious focus of someone performing delicate surgery. "Now, I know that being terrible at something isn't the same as being unable to learn to be good at it." The afternoon stretched lazily around them, filled with the sounds of children playing and the warm feeling of sunshine through oak leaves. Other families dotted the park, some wrestling with similar toddler dynamics, others chasing older children on bikes. A few walked babies in strollers who still slept through most outdoor adventures. "I got offered a promotion," Lena said suddenly, the words coming out in a rush as if she had been holding them back. "What kind of promotion?" "Regional Communications Director. It would mean overseeing the communications departments for 3 different hospitals." Adrian turned to face her fully. "That's incredible! It's exactly what you wanted. It would also mean more travel. Maybe 1 week out of every month. We'll figure it out." "Just like that? You don't need to think about logistics or childcare arrangements?" "Lena, you've supported my career through international conferences, emergency meetings, and weekend work sessions. Of course I'll support yours. It might mean hiring a nanny for backup childcare. Then we hire a nanny. It might mean you have to handle bedtime routines alone sometimes. Then I handle bedtime routines alone." Lena studied his face, looking for signs of the reluctance or resentment that she had learned to watch for in relationships. But Adrian's expression was genuinely supportive, not just willing to accommodate her career, but excited about it. "When did you become so easygoing about sharing family duties?" she asked. "When I realized that your success doesn't threaten mine. When I figured out that building a life together means both of us becoming the best versions of ourselves." Emma had abandoned the grass braiding project in favor of collecting acorns, which she was presenting to Oliver one at a time as if they were precious gifts. Oliver accepted each acorn solemnly, examining it carefully before placing it in the small pile they were building together. "Look at them," Lena said softly. "They're so good together. They're lucky to have each other. We all are." As the afternoon wound down and they packed up the remains of their picnic, Adrian realized that this ordinary Saturday at the park, was exactly what happiness looked like. Not the dramatic peaks he had once associated with success, but the steady rhythm of a life built with people who mattered. Ready to go home? He asked, lifting a sleepy Emma while Lena gathered a protesting Oliver. Home? Emma repeated drowsily, wrapping her arms around Adrian's neck. Home! Oliver echoed, though he was clearly disappointed to leave the Acorns behind. As they walked toward the car, Adrian caught Lena's hand in his free one. Thank you, he said. For what? For seeing something in me that I didn't know was there. For giving me the chance to become the man I actually wanted to be. Lena squeezed his hand. Thank you for becoming him. The drive home was quiet, both children falling asleep in their car seats within blocks of leaving the park. In the rearview mirror, Adrian could see their peaceful faces, flushed from sunshine and completely secure in the knowledge that they were safe and loved. At a red light, Lena reached over and touched Adrian's arm. Do you ever miss it? The life you had before? Adrian thought about the question seriously. Did he miss the freedom to make quick decisions? The simplicity of a life with no one else's needs to consider? The professional recognition that came from being completely devoted to work? No, he said finally, and meant it completely. I miss who I thought I was supposed to be, but I love who I actually am. The light turned green, and Adrian drove toward the house where his family was waiting to continue the quiet, ordinary, extraordinary business of loving each other through another day. Behind them, the park emptied as other families headed home to their own versions of happiness, leaving only the playground equipment and the oak trees to stand witness to all the small moments of joy that had unfolded under the Seattle sky. Some stories end with big, dramatic statements of love or huge actions that change everything in a single moment. But this story ended the way the best love stories do, with the promise of countless ordinary days ahead. Each one an opportunity to choose each other again. Looking back, would you have made the same choice Adrian did? Changing your entire life for love and family, even when it meant giving up the independence and control you thought made you who you were. Your thoughts mean a lot to the channel. Please share them in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.